Jesse James was a lad that killed many a man. He robbed the Danville train. He stole from the rich and he gave to the poor. He'd a hand, a heart and a brain. Jesse was a man, a friend to the poor. He couldn't see a brother suffer pain. And with his brother Frank he robbed the Springfield Bank, and he stopped the Glendale train. Jesse had a wife to mourn for his life, and 3 children, they were so brave. Well, that dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard has laid Jesse James in his grave. It was with his brother Frank that he robbed the Gallatin Bank and carried the money from the town. It was at that very place that they had a little chase, for they shot Captain Sheets to the ground. They went to a crossing not very far from there, and there they did the same. For the agent on his knees delivered up the keys to the outlaws Frank and Jesse James. Jesse had a wife to mourn for his life, and 3 children, they were so brave. But that dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard has laid Jesse James in his grave. It was on a Wednesday night, not a star was in sight, when they robbed the Glendale train. Those people, they did say, for many miles away, it was robbed by Frank and Jesse James. Then on a Saturday night, Jesse was at home, just talking with his family brave, when Robert Ford came along like a thief in the night, and laid poor Jesse in his grave. Jesse had a wife to mourn for his life, and 3 children, they were so brave. But that dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard has laid Jesse James in his grave. It was Robert Ford, the dirty little coward, and I wonder how he feels, for he slept in Jesse's bed and he ate Jesse's bread, but he laid Jesse James in his grave. Now the people held their breath when they heard of Jesse's death. They wondered how he came to die. It was one of his own gang called Little Robert Ford, and he shot Jesse James on the sly. Jesse had a wife who mourned for his life, and 3 children, they were so brave. But that dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard has laid Jesse James in his grave. Jesse went to rest with his hand upon his breast, and there are many who never saw his face. He was born one day in the county of Clay, and he came from a solitary race. This song was made by Billy Gashade as soon as the news did arrive. He said there's no one man with the law in his hand could ever take Jesse James alive. Jesse had a wife to mourn for his life, and his children too, they were brave. But that dirty little coward that shot Mr. Howard has laid Jesse James in his grave. They laid poor Jesse in his grave, yes, Lord. They laid Jesse James in his grave. He took from the rich and he gave to the poor, but they laid Jesse James in his grave.